Two-day early voting for the general election started today at over 3,500 polling stations across the nation. The voter turnout on this first day was higher than that of 4 years ago as of 5 p.m. Samsung Electronics has recorded an estimated earnings surprise for the first quarter, backed by recovering memory chips. LG Electronics, meanwhile, showed robust performances in business-to-business transactions and home appliance sales during the same period. The UN Human Rights Council passed a resolution condemning human rights violations in North Korea for the 22nd consecutive year, calling for urgent change. It's April 5th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. The first day of early voting for the April general election has just ended, and as of 5 p.m., the turnout surpassed that of the last general election. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young leads us off.
Early voting for the general election started at 6 a.m. on Friday nationwide. On the first day, a steady stream of people headed into the polling station to cast their ballots to select a new 300-member National Assembly. The Assembly seats are split at 264 for elected lawmakers and 46 for proportional representation candidates. As of 5 p.m., the voter turnout stood at 14.1% across the country. This marks an increase of 3.2 percentage points compared to the same period during the 2020 general election, showing a strong turnout.
I wasn't so actively involved in voting, but after having a baby, I decided to cast a ballot, since it shapes the society my child will grow up in.
I hope we get some politicians who prioritize the economy and people's livelihoods.
Voters can cast their ballots at any polling station in the country, but must have a form of identification such as a passport, driver's license, or an ID card. Residents voting in their local areas just need to fill out their ballot and place it directly in the ballot box. However, for those voting outside their residential area, it's necessary to place their ballot in a return envelope first before putting it in the box. Security measures for this year's early voting have been significantly strengthened compared to 4 years ago, aiming to enhance transparency and confidence in the election process. As part of these efforts, the National Election Commission is providing real-time CCTV recording in ballot box storage rooms with footage shared on large-screen monitors at regional NEC offices. Additionally, the method of marking serial numbers on early voting ballot papers has been changed from QR codes to barcodes, designed to be more secure. Police will escort the ballot boxes when they are moved from one location to another. Rival parties have urged voters to participate in early voting in order to maximize the turnout in the elections. Saturday will be the final day of early voting, with the voting booth open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 3,565 polling stations nationwide. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon cast his ballot on the first day of early voting for the 22nd general election in Busan. Joined by his senior secretaries on Friday, the South Korean leader visited a voting station in the southern coast city. Before entering the voting booth, he was briefed on how citizens can vote in advance outside their region of residence. After sealing his ballot and dropping it in the box, the president thanked the staff at the polling station for their hard work. Later in the day, Yoon also attended an Arbor Day event in Busan, planting a tree native to Korea with fifth graders from the vicinity. He pledged to better preserve and expand green spaces in urban areas, as well as forest experience centers for children. Talks Thursday afternoon between President Yoon and protesting junior doctors failed to secure a breakthrough in this current standoff. Choi Soo-hyung reports.
It seems there's no breakthrough in the medical reform dispute. Thursday's meeting between President Yoon and the head of the Korean Intern and Resident Association ended without any notable progress. Following the more than 2 hours long meeting, the presidential office said the government will respect what trainee doctors say, while Park Dan, the head of the KIRA, posted on his social media that there is no future for medicine in South Korea. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo stated on Friday that the dialogue has just about begun, mentioning the government's will for reforming the healthcare field. The Health Ministry also said in the same day's briefing that the government is engaging in talks, urging trainee doctors to return to the hospitals.
The President, Prime Minister, and health ministers are making every effort to engage in sincere dialogue with the medical community. The government urges them to cease collective actions and come forward to the discussion table openly.
The government's emergency medical system to address healthcare shortages is still ongoing. The government has extended the deployment period of military surgeons and public health doctors by an additional month, starting from Thursday. And 47 more medical institutions have been added to those designated to support severe and cancer patients. Also, a majority of medical school professors who submitted resignation letters or declared reduced working hours are still staying at their positions at hospitals. The medical dispute began with the government's plan to increase the number of medical school admission slots by 2,000. The government maintains the firm stance that 15,000 more doctors will be needed by 2035 due to the rapidly aging population. However, the medical community says that with the continuous decline in birth rates, there may not be a shortage of doctors in the future. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
On the corporate front, Samsung Electronics has recorded an estimated earnings surprise for the first quarter, backed by recovery memory chips. LG Electronics, meanwhile, showed robust performances in business-to-business transactions. An Sung-jin covers the early calculations for both companies.
Samsung Electronics has recorded an earnings surprise on the back of a rebound in memory chips. The tech giant on Friday announced an estimated operating profit for the first quarter of 2024 of 6.6 trillion won, or $4.89 billion. The figure is an increase of 931% compared to the same quarter last year, and even exceeds the total operating profit for 2023. Sales also saw on-year growth of 11.4%, hitting the 70 trillion won benchmark for the first time since the fourth quarter of 2022. The announced earnings exceeded forecasts from securities firms earlier this year by more than 20%. This is largely due to a jump in chip exports, which last month were at their highest since June 2022, led by an increase in the price and demand for memory chips. Though Samsung has yet to disclose the specific earnings of each division, the market consensus is that the operating profit for the device solution division in charge of semiconductors will be back in the black. Similarly, LG Electronics reached an all-time high for its first quarter sales this year, hitting 21.1 trillion won, or $15.6 billion. An earnings report released on Friday showed an on-year drop of 11% in its operating profits due to enhanced market competition and a rise in raw material prices. However, the company showed a positive performance in business-to-business transactions and sales of home appliances, with its profit at 1.33 trillion won, or $0.99 billion. Operating profits for the first quarter surpassed 1 trillion won for the fifth consecutive year, as the company has been releasing new models early in the year, such as its washing machines and dryers. It's estimated that LG's home appliance business, which takes up more than half of its operating profits, will hit a 3-year high with its premium products. The earnings reports for both companies released on Friday are estimates based on the International Financial Reporting Standards Foundation, and the final figures will be further announced once net profits are closed. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Findings for February show Korea's current account hovering in positive territory for the 10th month in a row, bolstered by a tangible recovery in chip exports. Moon Hye-ryun has the latest.
South Korea's trade balance logged a surplus once again on the back of the improving performance of chip exports. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday showed that the country's current account balance came to $6.86 billion in February. This is the 10th month in a row for the account to be in the black, following a surplus of just over $3 billion in January, and the BOK explained that it is well on track to meet its forecast of over $19 billion for the first half of the year. The goods account tracking imports and exports experienced a surplus for 11 months straight as semiconductor exports jumped by 63% compared to the same month last year.
While auto exports fell, the rise in memory chip prices and a recovery in the IT sector leading to increased demand led to a sharp rise in semiconductor exports for the 5th month in a row.
Data also show that outbound shipments of electronic goods increased by just under 33% on year, while exports of chemical goods dropped by nearly 9%. Another key reason the goods account maintained a surplus was lower import costs of raw materials due to falling energy prices. The value of gas imports for one fell by nearly 50% on year, and the value of energy-related imports dropped by more than a fifth. This led to an overall decline of imports by 13.1% compared to February last year. However, the services balance, which includes earnings and spending on overseas trips and transport, was in the red by $1.77 billion. The travel sector in particular recorded a deficit of $1.36 billion, but that's lower than the previous month's tally, which the BOK explained as being due to fewer people traveling overseas in February. Meanwhile, the primary account balance responsible for monitoring foreign workers' wages and overseas dividend payments reported a surplus of $2.44 billion. 문혜련, Arirang News.
South Korea is arranging a trilateral summit with Japan and China, which is likely to be held in Seoul next month. That's according to a source speaking to Arirang News, who said a main meeting is in the planning stage. The three-way annual summit has been stalled for 4.5 years since the last one in Chengdu, China, amid the souring of relations between Seoul and Tokyo, as well as Tokyo and Beijing, and during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Trilateral Summit of East Asian countries was first launched in 2008 to promote dialogue and cooperation on shared regional concerns, as well as facilitate closer trade relations. The Foreign Ministry said Friday that the exact date of the upcoming summit is currently being negotiated between the three sides. The international community has once again strongly criticized the human rights situation in North Korea. The UN Human Rights Council newly adopted a resolution on the regime for the 22nd year in a row. The South Korean government welcomed the decision, urging the North to take appropriate actions. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Pei Yun-ji reports.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has passed a resolution addressing human rights issues in North Korea. This marks the 22nd consecutive year that the Council has adopted the resolution since 2003. The 47-member Council unanimously approved it by consensus without a vote during its 55th session at the UN office in Geneva on Thursday local time. 3 countries, China, Cuba, and Eritrea, opted out of the session. Following the decision, North Korea expressed strong objection, accusing the West of fabricating human rights issues in the regime.
The so-called human rights issue faced by the West does not and cannot exist in the people-centered socialist system.
The South Korean government on Friday said it welcomes the decision and urged the North to take appropriate action, especially on issues including abductees and detainees.
The government is deeply concerned about the continuation of systematic, widespread, and serious human rights violations in North Korea. We call on the North to take necessary measures to improve human rights according to the resolution. This includes resolving the issue of abductees, detainees, and prisoners of war, as well as ensuring the rights of North Korean residents to have access to information.
Thursday's resolution condemns North Korea's widespread violations of human rights and calls for urgent reform. It strongly calls on the regime to abolish or amend laws that limit the freedom of thought, religion, and expression. A significant addition to this year's version includes the request for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to prepare a comprehensive report on the human rights situation in North Korea by September 2025. The request comes amid a worsening human rights situation in North Korea, even though a decade has passed since the publication of the 2014 UN Commission of Inquiry report on the regime's human rights. The latest resolution also calls for North Korea to join key human rights treaties, such as the Convention Against Torture. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea is set to launch its second military reconnaissance satellite from Florida next Monday, Korea time. With this, the military's reconnaissance capabilities are expected to be greatly improved. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung explains why.
The countdown begins next Monday morning for the launch of the South Korean military's second reconnaissance satellite. It was announced by the military on Friday that the satellite will be launched from a space center in Florida at 8:17 a.m. Korea time. As was the case for the first launch, it will be carried by a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The satellite is set to separate from the rocket some 45 minutes after launch and establish communication with the ground station around 9 minutes after separation. The second launch comes about 4 months after the country launched its first last December. The first was placed into orbit equipped with an electro-optical and infrared sensor, also called the EOIR satellite. The satellite can capture detailed images, but the visibility depends on the weather and time of day. The second satellite, however, will be equipped with synthetic aperture radar sensors, also known as a SAR satellite. The system captures clear images during the day and night, regardless of weather conditions. The EOIR satellite checks in on the Korean peninsula twice a day, but the SAR satellite does so about 4 to 6 times a day. This means the military can perform twice as many reconnaissance activities with the launch of the second satellite. Under South Korea's 425 mission, a total of 5 satellites will be launched into orbit by 2025 to boost surveillance of the Korean peninsula amid North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats. Apart from the first satellite, the rest of the 4 will be SARs. When all 5 operate together, the military is expected to perform regular coverage at about 2-hour intervals. The Defense Ministry is also seeking to launch 50 to 60 small and ultra-small reconnaissance satellites by 2030 to shorten the intervals to around 30 minutes. Next week's launch comes as North Korea is also ramping up its spy equipment. The North launched its first spy satellite last November and aims to launch 3 more this year. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Defense Minister Shin Won-sik met the ambassadors of the United Nations Command member states today and suggested making the ROK-UNC member states' defense ministerial meeting a regular event. Ambassadors from 17 UNC member states, including the US, the UK, and Canada, agreed on the importance of the meeting, according to the Defense Ministry. The first such meeting between the defense ministers was held back in November. The ministry is preparing to host a second meeting later this year and is planning on holding them more regularly. Time now for our weekly arts and culture segment. We have our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin in the studio. Evening, Yoo-jin.
Happy Friday, Jungmin.
Happy Friday. What do you have for us today?
Well, Jungmin, as we just saw, today is Arbor Day here in Korea, and Korea has been celebrating April 5th as Arbor Day since 1946, promoting the importance of trees, forest planting trees, and just protecting the environment in general. So for this week, in light of Arbor Day, I looked into what kind of efforts are being made in the cultural sector, specifically in the world of K-pop, to protect our planet Earth.
Did you know that simply buying your favorite K-pop albums or streaming their music can have a big impact on the environment? According to the Environment Ministry, K-pop companies used over 800 tons of plastic for physical albums, a 14-fold increase from 2017. And it's known that streaming music for 5 hours online emits more carbon dioxide than one physical album coming from data centers and servers. But there is hope. The K-pop industry is going green, led by the fans.
K-pop isn't just about management agencies and artists providing content. The fans play a huge role, as you need a dedicated fan base to become a global star. We're seeing fans come together, speaking up about social issues, particularly when it comes to the environment. That's why I believe there's a growing awareness within the industry about these issues.
One of them is K-pop for Planet, an online platform launched in 2021 by fans to raise awareness about climate change.
There's quite a diverse range of age groups among K-pop fans, but a lot of them are in their 20s or teens like me. We're going to be the ones living through this era of climate crisis, so I think this is why many of us are recognizing that this is truly our issue and speaking out with more passion.
For the past 3 years, they've been starting petitions and campaigns demanding K-pop labels to offer albums with digital download options and music streaming platforms to opt for data centers using renewable energy.
Fans often buy a large quantity of albums to help their artists win year-end awards and weekly music shows. And fans of popular artists buy hundreds of albums for a chance to participate in fan sign events. Albums often include random photo cards and other merchandise, encouraging fans to buy them even more.
These efforts are paying off. This company in Seoul, for example, is the first in the world to create a platform album. Unlike the thick albums we're used to, it minimized the packaging with the majority of content accessible by scanning the QR code inside.
An album usually consists of photo cards, photo books, and a CD. We think it's important to balance going green with promoting the artist through this merchandise. Our goal was to use eco-friendly materials, such as paper certified by the Forest Stewardship Council for photo cards that fans love the most, and upload the rest of the content online.
Through these efforts, K-pop is evolving into something that not only fans, but Mother Earth can enjoy.
I did not know albums and even streaming music have this much of an impact on the environment.
Neither did I, Jungmin. And it's actually very interesting because the eco-friendly campaigns and the merchandise mentioned in the report, fans say that they are starts of a very meaningful and much-needed change, but more needs to be done. And that's because some entertainment companies are still producing and releasing merchandise, labeling them as eco-friendly or green merchandise. But in reality, they are putting in random photo cards inside these merchandise still, which makes fans still buy them multiple times, which leads to excessive and unnecessary waste. So still, there is a long road ahead.
I see. Now shifting gears a little bit, Yoon, are there any events being held on the cultural front to celebrate Arbor Day?
Well, there is, and I'm glad you asked because the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul is currently holding an exhibition from today displaying the works of Korea's first-generation landscape architect Chung Yong-sun from today until September 22nd. Now, most of his 60 large and small projects will be on display for the first time, allowing visitors to see more than 500 of the architect's pastel, pencil, and watercolor drawings, as well as his blueprints, photographs, and videos.
That sounds exciting. Thanks, Yoon.
Thank you.
The streets are getting brighter and brighter in this warm weather. Cherry blossoms have been in full bloom for a few days. It will be sunny this weekend, so it will be perfect to go out. Seoul is expected to rise to 19 degrees Celsius tomorrow and to 22 degrees the day after tomorrow. Also, skies will be bluer than today in the central parts of the country. However, starting tomorrow night, there will be places where the concentration of fine dust will increase, mainly in western central areas and the Gyeongsang-do provinces. Temperatures tomorrow morning will be 8 degrees in Seoul and Daejeon, similar to or slightly lower than today. During the day, the temperatures will rise quickly, so it will be warmer than today. They will rise to 19 degrees in Seoul and Busan, 20 in Daejeon. On Monday, temperatures will rise further, and the daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to around 23 degrees, feeling like early summer. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.